I'm from Dry, Utah. And all of a sudden I'm trying to tell people how to garden in wet Western Washington. So there was a pretty good learning curve there. Anyway, so after a while I thought I have to do something. I appealed to get some help in the office, and they said, no, you are a lone volunteer sacrificial lamb, whatever you want to call it. So I went to them, I asked them, anyway, because I'd grown up in this volunteer environment, I knew people would volunteer, they're just good. How many of you feel good? Come on, get your hands up, you all feel good. Why? Because you're doing good things. That's cool. Anyway, so I talked to one of the gals who I was very impressed with, was president of one of the local garden clubs. And I asked her about it. Would you like something where you could volunteer and help others? Oh, well, that's what we're trying to do with our club anyway. But their outreach was 20 people. Their outreach just wasn't very big. So I proposed it to our specialists in Puyallup, Washington, and got immediately shot down. And they said, number one, you can't get people to volunteer. Number two, the volunteers would not be qualified. Number three, the people wouldn't come to a clinic to get help, and on and on. And so I kept bringing it up, and they kept shooting me down. I was rather persistent, and they were getting rather angry about it. So I thought of a way to get around it. You see, there's always a back door. And if you find the back door, you can sneak in. So what I did was, that when I first arrived on the scene in Seattle, there was a gentleman by the name of Steve Lorton. He was a regional editor for Sunset Magazine. He was a great writer, but he didn't know anything about gardening. And so he came to me in a slight panic and said, is there any way you can help me get my feet wet in this job? I don't want to lose this job. And he says, if I can't write good gardening articles, I'm in trouble. So I ghost wrote for him for a while. And then after he got to where he was really studying hard to learn a lot about gardening, he would bring me his articles for a while, and I would proofread them to make sure they were okay. So he owed me one. I'm not embarrassed to call out a marker. So I said, I'll tell you what, I had this idea and I explored it with him, and so I went down to Tacoma Mall. And I went in the mall, and I went into the mall offices. I said, I'm thinking of having a clinic here for all your gardening people in the area. Would you like to be the sponsor? He said, well, what are we going to do? Provide us a place in the mall, put up some placards. That's it? What are you going to do? Well, I'll see if I can't get a whole bunch of, quote, experts in that will take care of a lot of people in a quick hurry. So I went back to my cohorts in Puyallup and said, listen, you've got some good reasoning behind your objections to what I want to do. But we can't address all those reasons. Let's just address one of them. The one we'll address is, will people come to a clinic? That seems pretty innocuous, pretty safe. They're not really agreeing to much. We'll just do that. So I went back and we got a turf specialist, we got a small veg specialist, we had a disease specialist, had an ornamentalist. Who else? Oh, an entomologist. And we got them all to come, and I was kind of the generalist that ran around telling people who to go to. And then what they didn't know, because they didn't think anybody had come, they thought they'd silence Gibby once and for all. Not only did we put placards up in the mall, but I was on 3 television networks. Right. You know, you can get a lot of press from TV. So I advertised them in all 3. We had our hort tip line. So I put it every day for 2 weeks, mentioned it on the hort tip line, where this was coming up in the area. We did newspaper articles. The local newspaper was really great. I wrote a really nice opinion piece talking about the need and focusing on our little clinic that we were going to have. We got mobbed. It was great. And guess who was there with his camera crew? Steve Horton from Sunset Magazine. So when it was all done, Steve Horton comes out with a full spread in the magazine. Wanted expert gardeners to become master gardeners. We had 300 volunteers immediately. We couldn't handle all 300 of them, so we pared it down to the best 150, 75 from each county, and scheduled training. I went back to the people in Puyallup and said, hey guys, you got two choices. I don't know what to do with all these people who volunteered that you said wouldn't volunteer. I didn't know what you're going to do with those, so you can either help me train them, or I'll do it myself. It's your call. And here's what we're doing it. They grumbled and they came and helped me train them. And they were wonderful. In fact, they were just fantastic. And all of a sudden, they realized we were onto something because these people weren't stupid. They weren't uneducated. They already knew, in a lot of cases, more than they did. And all of a sudden, we had the bull by the tail. And it wasn't very long, and I got calls from Spokane. I got calls from Tumwater and other counties in the state wanting to know what we were doing, because those specialists had gone back to the school and said, you know, we got some things going in King Pierce County, you may want to know about it. All of a sudden they were getting a little bit of pride in what they had helped get started. And later on, of course, they wanted to say it was their idea, but that's okay. Well, the thing was, is it wasn't very long, and we started evaluating how well they were answering gardening problem questions. And we figured we were getting over 98% accurate responses. Can you imagine that? First go around, 98% correct answers. How many of you think you're going to get everything right every time? You just don't. I don't, you don't, nobody does. Even the entomologist in the day. It was interesting because someone brought in some insects, and it was I think it's called a lycus bug. It's a little critter that makes the leaves all curl up, and you can pull a leaf off and fill up your hand full of the little critters. It's kind of fun. And they were on something they'd never seen them before. So I went in and I took some to one of our entomologists, and he says, well, that can't be that. They don't, that's not a host plant for them. So I took in the leaf, everything, and he said, well, I guess it is a host plant for them. See, we all have our respective expertises, don't we? Well, you know, the thing was, is the growth was just became spontaneous after that. We had one of our group was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Bernie Wiesenberg. Bernie was just a great guy. He was a supporter from the beginning, and he was great because he had contacts all over the country. So Bernie would get on the phone and say, hey, you got to hear what we're doing in Seattle and Tacoma. What? Well, we're using volunteers, and here's how we're using them. You guys ought to hear about this. So pretty soon we were in, I think Oregon was the next state. Then we were in Colorado, then we were in California, then we were in New York, and then we were in Texas. You know, when it starts spreading like that, pretty soon people just talk. And that's why it happened. Now I want to tell you something else. You know, we go along fat, dumb, and happy, and we don't realize just how amazingly good the service we're doing. I got to tell you how important service is. When I had a little young family, and we were living. Our kids they were enjoying Christmas from the wrong standpoint. We need to teach them what Christmas is about. And so we discussed it a little bit. We knew a gal in our area who was having a real hard time. And the funny thing is, she came from a very wealthy family. She had a very nice inheritance, had a beautiful large home, about 5 times bigger than ours. And her husband left her in a mess. She had no way of supporting herself because she'd never had to. She never had any job experience, so she went out almost working for minimum wage, trying to support this big house and one child, one female child. And we knew she needed help. We didn't have the ability. She could have sold her home, but she really liked that house and she wanted to try and keep it. Well, anyway, on one occasion we told the kids, let's do something fun for Christmas, and it's going to come out of your Christmas presents. They said, what? Well, we'll do something nice for somebody, and you can feel how good it feels to do that, because you're paying for it out of your Christmas. The kids were a little hesitant at first, so we went out and bought a great big turkey, and we wrote a nice note. We didn't have any of the kids sign it, we just said with love from a friend. And then we had the kids come and put it on the front porch, ring the doorbell, and run back and hide in the bushes. They thought it was the funnest thing they'd ever done. We did it to 2 families that year. And they waited until they came to the door and looked down. There's this big turkey with a note on it, love from a friend. Picked it back up, and when they waited in the bushes, and pretty soon she comes out, puts the turkey inside, comes out and looks down, looks at all the bushes. The kids were having a hard time not giggling. But I'll tell you what, our kids, to this day, the ones that were alive at that time, still remember that Christmas above all others. Why is that? Why is it when you do something good, it engenders a memory which is extra special, which endures and lasts forever and ever and ever? You know, when the Master Gardener program was 30 years old, I had the opportunity to speak to a group in Portland, Oregon. And it was a large group. It wasn't about half as big as this one, maybe 2/3 as big. It was a big group. And there were Master Gardeners from all over, and a lot from the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, I'm feeling my way around. I went, checked in, went up to the room, and came back down to find out what they really wanted me to do. And I walked into this big hall, and there were Master Gardeners everywhere, and they noticed signs. Most of them didn't know who I was, but all of a sudden I heard this scream. And I heard, Dr. Gibby, Dr. Gibby, Dr. Gibby. I turned around, and there were 12 of the original Master Gardeners, the very first class. They came screaming across the hall. We exchanged hugs. You remember me, you remember me, you remember me. We're still going. 30 years and counting, we're still going. I had a heck of a good ball. And we had wonderful hugs. I'm going to tell you about one of those who was there. Her name was Helen Lee. Helen Lee was a neighbor, lived right across the street from the very first home we lived in when we lived in Washington. Helen was single. She had spent her years as a school teacher and had never married. A wonderful lady. And she was a natural gardener. She had hedges around her house. There was, oh gosh, there was as tall as that tree from the main floor up. And our kids figured out how to climb through the hedge and get into her yards, because Helen always had a cookie for them. And so pretty soon she wasn't Helen Lee anymore, she was Aunt Helen. And she would always call me over whenever she had a plant problem in her yard. We'd walk around her yard, and her main problem was she had too much shade, because she had such a protective area in her yard. There was a little too much shade for some of the stuff she was trying to grow. The rhododendrons are stretching a little, and other things. And I said, Helen, with all this shade and boundary, you're just not going to be able to grow some of the stuff you want to grow. Well, put them out in the front yard, you're going to be okay. So that's what she did. Anyway, Helen came to me because she was an avid reader of Sunset Magazine. She says, you're in the magazine. I said, yeah. She said, I don't want to be in. You gotta let me in. And I said, well, we'll do an interview, but for you, we'll just say you've had your interview already. And bless her heart, she was one of the first group. There was a bond there that was rather extraordinary. Grandkids. And she treated them just like that. If we couldn't find our kids, we'd go around. We couldn't squeeze through the hedge like our kids could. So we'd actually have to walk around the front, because her backyard and our front yard were right close together. But we'd walk around and, Helen, have you got Heidi? Have you got Michael? Yeah, I've got them. They're in there having a cookie. Anyway, years later, hadn't seen Helen for quite a long time. We knew she had to be getting old. We decided to visit from Washington. We had some friends up there we hadn't seen for a long time. So we went back to the state of Washington, drove into Kent, Washington, and we drove to her door. Knocked on her door and no one came. Felt badly, so we wrote a little note. Helen, we're really sorry we missed you. Wanted to see you very badly. You are precious and dear to us, and hopefully we'll have another opportunity. Signed it, the Gibbys, tucked it inside her screen door, and went to visit some of the other people that we were going to see. On the way out of town, we said maybe we ought to try and see Helen one more time. So we went and knocked on her door again, and she still wasn't home, but the note was gone. I thought, well, she's been home. She knows we love her. So I wrote another note, and I guess my wife, she does all the notes. I call it me, but she does the writing. Just amazingly, you can read her writing. Where mine, you have to kind of guess at half the words. But anyway, so we wrote another note, and I left the car, and I was walking back from the putting it in the screen, the same place I put the other note. And here, I heard a car coming. It wasn't just coming, it was coming. That car was moving. And I looked up, and I could recognize the car. It was the same car she drove 35 years ago when we were in Kent. I guess she put all her money in the Master Gardeners, nothing into new mode of transportation. Anyway, she come gunning into that driveway, and the car's still bouncing as she's out of the car. She ran over, we got out of the car, and she had one arm around my wife and one arm around me. And she says, I thought I missed you. But we said we were